Welcome to the Voices of Long COVID podcast. I'm your host, Noelle. On this podcast, I'll be interviewing people who are suffering with long COVID and asking them to share their very personal but compelling stories, giving them a voice, unfiltered and uncensored. There are an estimated 65 million people suffering with long COVID worldwide, including 20 million Americans and 2.1 million Canadians. I myself am one of them since my COVID infection in March of 2020. What is long COVID? It is a condition where individuals experience persistent symptoms or new symptoms that develop after the acute phase of COVID-19. These symptoms can last for weeks, months, or years, significantly impacting a person's life and level of daily functioning. Each episode will feature a different long COVID patient, sharing their unique perspective and offering insight into their daily struggles, strategies, and experience. There are currently no treatments for this illness. I am shining a light on the invisible illness that sufferers are having to navigate every day on their own, out of the public eye. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Robert, a 41-year-old long COVID sufferer from Hamilton, Ontario. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really grateful to have you here. Your story is the perfect example of someone who is super healthy and active and ambitious, had a very full life before COVID changed all of that. So let's start with a bit of your history and background. Tell us, what was your life like and your health like before your COVID infection?
Yes. So, after I did my university degree, I went to Teachers College, and then I moved to Japan right away. I spent 2 years in Japan. Then I relocated to Singapore, where I was an international school teacher for 9 years. I did extensive traveling. I really enjoy adventure traveling, like places like Mongolia, like Myanmar. I did Everest Base Camp in Nepal.
Wow.
Really active. I did my master's degree in public policy at the National University of Singapore before I returned to Canada in 2017. Then I met my future partner in Atlanta. I was visiting friends who I had lived with in Singapore, and I decided to relocate to Atlanta in September 2019. So I was ready to start my new adventure living in Atlanta with my partner. And then, I contracted COVID in February 2020. So right early on, right before we even know what it was.
Early on, yeah. Right. So what are the circumstances around you getting COVID and subsequently long COVID?
Yeah. So I was basically, when I moved to the US, I was waiting for my employment authorization document. So I was just getting adjusted to life in the US, and I had started working with a career counselor to kind of get ready to start applying for jobs. So my partner and I decided to go on vacation to Florida, to Orlando, to the Disney parks before I got my employment authorization, and I was able to kind of start working and jump into my new career.
It's a little vacation before
Yeah.
the career.
So basically, we went to the Disney parks, and I remember it like vividly. We were at Epcot, and that was the day I caught COVID. I don't think I've ever been so sick before in my life. I remember that evening, like I just had intense gastro pain and fever that was like out of control. I was hallucinating.
Wow.
My partner said he'd never seen anything like that before. So I actually like can really pinpoint when I got it, because I never felt the same again since. It's been almost 4 years.
And did you have the respiratory symptoms, or was it mainly?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yes. So that was actually what felt different to me than like say, like a cold or the flu. I had just a lot of fluid in my chest. A year later, when I, was getting, screened for all different sorts of issues that came up, my doctor actually told me I had pneumonia, which actually, makes sense because I just had a lot of kind of fluid in my chest, and it was very severe. Yeah.
And you had mentioned when I spoke with you earlier that you had had some pretty intense symptoms right away, something to do with your teeth.
Oh
Can you tell us
yeah.
about that?
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of it was probably maybe maybe like 3 to 4 weeks after initial infection. Teeth were my lower front. They like were loose and they were kind of wiggling around, and I was just having a lot of pain. And yeah, I lost three of my bottom front teeth within 2 weeks.
Crazy.
The dentist had to pull them out. When I was just recapping and preparing for the interview, I just found a study that a lot of people have this bone loss in the lower jaw and in the front of the mouth. This is actually quite a common thing, and actually is an indication of the severity of COVID. So I lost these three teeth, and I had a temporary, a mouth guard for hockey that
Yeah.
was painted with like whiteout, basically where my teeth were lost, given to me like temporarily. But then that's when everything started shutting down.
Right.
So the dentist called me and said, "Yeah, we're closing up. We don't know when we're going to be opening again. So see you in a couple months time." And I and I had three missing teeth, and I had this hockey guard. It was pretty traumatizing to see them.
No kidding. That's horrible.
Yes.
So what did your dentist and your doctor have to say about that? That's a pretty visible symptom.
Yeah, it was definitely like kind of the first marker of something that was, definitely substantial. I mean,
Yeah.
she couldn't really explain it. Luckily her husband had sustained an injury previously where he had issues with his lower jaw, and so she was able to complete for me like a bridge, like a permanent bridge later on. And she was really just like wonderful. But yeah, she couldn't explain the bone loss.
Yeah, I remember reading a lot of comments on social media about long haulers having these sensations in their gums. I had that as well. In
Yes,
my
yes.
my lower front
Oh,
gums
you had
felt
this?
ticklish. Yeah, nothing happened with my teeth, but I just had that tickling sensation. It was really strange.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
experienced anything like that.
Yes. That was kind of my first I guess that would be like my first kind of symptom. Along with like kind of really intense cycles between like fevers and chills. I kind of
Yes.
just continued on, and insomnia was one of the first things
Yes.
that I really struggled with. I mean, I've always struggled with insomnia, but this was at a level that it was just off the charts. I mean, I still suffer with it. I mean, I probably um, only sleep maybe
Yeah.
4 nights a week. I just kind of accepted it, and it's just the way it is. But I remember very vividly the insomnia it was very marked, and it was yeah, it was just a lot of things happening at once. All these kind of symptoms started to kind of emerge, but that's something that sticks out in my mind for sure.
Yeah. Um, what has your experience been like with receiving medical care for long COVID?
So yeah, so I was in the US. I returned to Canada in August of this year, at the end of August. So I was there for the first 3 years of my long COVID adventure. I have to say that the medical care that I have received has been quite good. Initially, though, I did face like a considerable amount of gaslighting and incredulation. Uh, Basically, like my first kind of medical intervention was I was hospitalized in January of 2021. And then I kind of like suffered like this like really like intense bout of memory loss. Like it was just it kind of just emerged over a couple of days, and it just got continuously got worse. Like I couldn't even remember like my sister's names, and it was just it coincided with these really intense headaches, and it got to the point where I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta go to the emergency room, and that kind of was the beginning of my medical treatment, and like kind of exploring and figuring out what this condition is. So that actually led into like I was hospitalized in January, then February, then March and April. So I had
Wow.
4 ER visits back to back to back, and that's when I kind of was able to kind of segue into a long COVID clinic in Atlanta.
Sorry, so when you went to the hospital, how were you received? When you said I can't remember my sister's names, I have these intense headaches. What did they say to you?
At about the end of December 2020, I began to like I found Survivor Corps on Facebook, and I
Yes, it
found the
was
long
amazing.
COVID community that was emerging, and I began to see other people who were suffering with the same strange symptoms, and I put it all together. So when I went to the emergency, like I explained that I had what I believed to be a COVID-19 infection in February of the previous year, and that I believed that I had long COVID. So my first hospitalization, she was the admitting physician. She was really, open. She tested me for a bunch of different things, treated me as best as she could. But then, like, say for example, the second ER visit, that doctor thought I was like psycho. Like he thought I was like in hysteria. Like I just felt so unheard and
Hmm.
almost like a nuisance. And it was the beginning of my kind of questioning of some medical professionals, and a range of different kind of reception to what what it is long COVID, and what it consists of, and how it presents itself. Yeah, it was a challenging time for
Yeah,
sure, and scary too.
it was definitely a scary time. And so, in the midst of all that, how did long COVID impact your relationships with your family, your friends, with your colleagues?
I mean, it definitely put a strain on my marriage. There's a lot of fighting about, I was tired to go. I was tired to go out, and I didn't want to do things. And my ex partner, took it a lot personally, like that I didn't want to go out, and I was just kind of making excuses. So there was a lot of kind of tension with regards to that. I had just moved down there, and it was definitely a challenge in terms of kind of adapting. I didn't really have like my own set of friends down there, so it was hard because I felt like I was on my own. So I really had to use like social media to connect with friends and family. But I mean, I did receive a
Hmm.
lot of support. I had to crowdsource some of my medical bills initially. Like in the US, like even if you have insurance, you still have to pay out of pocket, like a considerable amount of money, especially for emergency care. I had to start a GoFundMe, and I mean, I had a really good response from my family and my friends, and like even like my old students and like parents of like students I
Oh,
taught.
wow.
I mean, a lot of people really surprised me, and they were really supportive from a distance. I mean, they didn't really understand what was going on. It was kind of a scary time for my family, but I did receive a lot of like an outpouring of love and support. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah,
What symptoms do you continue to have now? And have you received any new diagnoses that you would like to share?
for me, uh, fatigue is probably one of the worst symptoms. Just like it's not like anything that I've ever experienced it before in my life.
Right. Can you
It's
explain it a bit?
simple.
Because people
Oh
think,
God, it's horrible.
everyone thinks, oh, I'm tired too. So tell me what the fatigue is like for you.
Like, I mean, having a shower is like you know, reach the summit of, like Mount Everest.
And this is from somebody who has hiked to the base of Mount Everest, and now you're saying a shower is equal to that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
oh, a shower. It's incredible. I mean, I mean, doing a load of laundry, I mean, could take me, 10 hours. Like, I mean, it's just bone crushing fatigue. Like it's debilitating. I mean, you can't function. But yeah, I mean, having a shower, like if I get through the day and I have a shower, I mean, that's for me, like that's okay. I made it, that's my marker of like a day that's good, it's
Absolutely.
horrible. Yeah. I mean, I used to run full marathons. I mean, I used to be super active. I mean, it's really kind of sad, but I mean, it's my new normal. But I find I suffer a lot with the kind of neuro, like cognitive impairments, just like the confusion, memory loss, like
Yeah. Oh,
a
yeah.
lack of ability to focus, kind of just scattered. I feel like I'm like in a pool, like swimming, like, underwater. When you open your eyes when you're swimming underwater, that's what I feel like. I kind of like my state of mind. I just feel like everything is just blurry, and I'm so disorganized, and I can't. It's really hard to just function and do basic tasks like pay bills, like use a calendar, like really simple things. Like it's hard. But things like shortness of breath. I couldn't walk probably a quarter of a mile for about 2 years. I mean, walk to check the mail and come back, and that would be it for the day.
Yep.
That's
That's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I've gotten better over time with my ability to walk, but I can only probably walk. I think in U.S. now, so like about a mile is my kind of limit. And even then, some days I can't do that. So it really depends.
Hmm.
Those are the kind of the major things that really I find impair me or that come to the forefront. I mean, there's over 200 symptoms. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, there's just weird things like, you know, uh, one of my first kind of physical symptoms that was really quite shocking was I had like really sensitive on the bottom of my feet. Like it was just so painful to walk. I had to buy these like big plushy slippers. And then I had like this burning on the top of my head for like a month. And then all of a sudden, like like I'd say half my hair fell out within like 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, gosh.
And I had like, it was just kind of like patchy and just these random weird symptoms, and that kind of come and go. There's kind of cycles of it. I mean, after 4 years, I mean, I feel like I've kind of experienced almost all of the 200 symptoms.
And so, after time, having all these symptoms, have the doctors come up with anything new?
No, I mean, it's all symptom management, right? It's all band-aid solutions to everything, like, beta blockers, like gabapentin for neuropathy, you know, things to just deal with the symptoms, not with the kind of root cause. So, but which have their own side effects, right? Like I'm taking like antihistamines, but sometimes they make me so tired, and like it's just like the trade-off is like, is it worth it? So like, I'm on probably 9 different medications, and it's all to do with kind of they're symptom-based kind of medications.
Yeah, it's kind of, I feel like the medications are preventing us from getting worse, but they're not really improving much.
No, they aren't. I mean, these things make me more tired. So it's like, okay, how am I dealing with the fatigue? Okay, let me take a like an amphetamine, like it's just like it's taking one medication to deal with the side effect of another medication. And it's just like, it's a frustrating, but also, you just want to feel better, right? It's like, what am I going to do? And how can I get to that point where I can actually, maybe function a little bit better? Yeah.
We're going to take a break and remind you with full disclosure that this podcast takes several days to record and create, depending on the health of the host and the guests. I'm relying on the help of others for editing. Any discussion of modalities or treatments are not to be considered medical advice. If you believe you have long COVID, know that you are not alone. Seek out the many Facebook groups for community support, such as Long COVID Canada and COVID Long Haulers Support Group Canada, and please speak to your doctor for medical support. You had mentioned to me in our pre-interview that you've been diagnosed with something called POTS,
Yes.
which for people that don't know, it's postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
Yeah.
And it's something that many long COVID sufferers are now dealing with, including myself. It's a problem with blood volume. So the blood is not getting to our brains. Can you talk a bit about how that affects your daily life?
Yeah. So basically it's your heart rate is elevated in terms of your beats per minute. So, previously, like when I was doing long distance running, like I had a really low BPM, like at like 42, like it's quite low.
That's very
But
low.
now my resting heart rate, oftentimes over 100 when I'm just like sitting. So basically with POTS, it's like depending on the position of your body, your heart rate can skyrocket quite significantly, and oftentimes leads you to like dizziness and passing out and things like that. So that was when I like finally, like after attending this long COVID clinic, after going through the initial intake by the pulmonologist who totally gaslit me, I was connected to a PA, and she checked my heart rate, which I had not noticed yet that my heart rate was elevated. Like I was experiencing the symptoms of it, like dizziness, and I was fainting a lot and passing out a lot, which I still do. But she was able to diagnose me with POTS. I mean, it was nice to have like some sort of diagnosis. I mean, at least it kind of was validation that there was something going on for me, that it was not all psychosomatic. I mean, but yeah, I'm always checking to see if my heart rate's elevated too high. Because if I reach 165 to like 170 beats per minute, that's when I reach the, fainting pass out kind of zone where I can go unconscious for, sometimes an hour, sometimes 10 hours. I've gone walking my dog around the block and I've, woken up on my neighbor's front lawn like hours later. Sometimes when I go driving, like I'll park my car and I guess I just pass out from, the mental processing and everything in terms of driving. It just makes my heart rate get elevated. And, I've woken up in parking lots like 10 hours after I had parked my car. It's kind of scary, but
that's very scary.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of gotten used to it. I mean, when I tell people this, they're like, oh my God, like, like you shouldn't, like, what are you doing? Like, oh my God, this is like so dangerous. But I'm like, I was on my own for a couple of years when I was in the States, and I had to drive my car, and I had to basically function as best as I could and just kind of deal with things as they come along. So
you mentioned that you were very active before your COVID infection, working and teaching around the world. What is your daily life like now? How has your life changed?
My day-to-day life is really just kind of just trying to attend to basic needs, like eating, trying to take a shower or bathe if I can, and resting.
Yep.
Depending on the day and depending on if I've had sleep or not. I mean, I wake up at all different times and it's not really predictable each day. I'll get up whenever I can. I'll make some breakfast. I'll pour a bowl of cereal, sit down, eat, then take a rest. My dog's usually, excited to, be up and ready to go. So I'll do my best to, conjure enough energy to bring her outside to go take a pee. And then, I just kind of read the news, just kind of like, resting. I mean, I just don't have a lot of energy each day. So it's just kind of pacing myself. I try and take a walk around the block with my dog, and then just kind of try and plan out at least one thing or two things I want to accomplish in the day, like contacting my doctor, or like just organizing my medications that I need to take. It's just really simple tasks, but everything takes a lot of energy out of you. I mean, I'm sure you experience yourself, just simple tasks, like just, making an appointment. Honestly, for me, I really struggle with using a calendar and being able to, think ahead, to next week, just things like organizing bills. Like that is really a challenge for me. And like just such a simple task that, I would take for granted is, it can occupy my whole day, or it's something that I might need assistance with, or it's something that might actually push me to the point where I reach that PEM state where it's just I've pushed myself too far cognitively or physically, where I just am shut down for the rest of the day, and I can't really move. Or it's kind of just switching between, some simple tasks and then rest, and then I'm back at it again. And I try and just get through as much as I can in a day. Some days it's just like, okay, having a shower is an accomplishment, and I feel satisfied with that. Yeah,
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
yeah,
For me, it's the cognitive confusion that you're talking about. I've never had a concussion, but to me, it sounds like and feels like I'm concussed. Like I
yeah,
get this brain pressure and figuring out things like paying for parking,
yeah.
or, just something that would have been the most basic task before is so overwhelming.
It is, and it's hard to kind of convey that to somebody.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because um, it's these things that all add up together that create the impairment, the disability. It's it's just frustrating. Just doing simple things, just living is hard.
Yeah.
Like it's
And these are things that are invisible. That's why it's called invisible illness, is we don't have, a cast on our leg.
right.
So the public doesn't understand, right? I mean, I always feel self-conscious when on the rare times I do drive, I have a disability parking pass now. And I feel like when I get out of the car, someone's going to look at me and go, she doesn't need that.
Right.
Right. And you're always afraid there's these Karens out there that are going to,
Maybe, please.
call on you and be like, what are you doing?
Exactly. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's things that like you don't even like. Whereas when you're healthy, you don't think about like how am I going to make this appointment or figure out this. Like you become like so it's things that you do automatically, and like, that's why it's really hard for people to understand the struggles that we go through. It's because these are tasks that you would just do, without even thinking about, in normal day-to-day life when you're healthy. But I mean, yeah, just things like I say like booking an appointment like that, like I have to like think about it, like rest, it's like a whole all-consuming kind of thing. And it's like, it's really difficult when that's just like one thing that you have to get done in a day of a million other things. It just seems like life is so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. My to-do list just grows and grows because I can do one or two things on that list each day.
Right.
And we used to run classrooms and be in charge of 20, 30 students and their families and their learning, and, approaching the learning differently for each of those students. And that just, makes my head explode at this point. There's no way I could do that
Yeah,
now.
like as a school teacher, you're making like, thousands of decisions a day on the spot, and you are, it's constant. Like, um, it's I can't even remember what it's like. I mean, when I
No.
think back to it, it's like, how exciting life was.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah,
And how
you really,
fast life was.
yeah. And like, it's just like, and just your abilities. Like now I think back to like, wow, like I'm pretty, I was a pretty good teacher, and I accomplished a lot in my life, when in contrast to like, just things like making my bed. Oh my God. Like, I mean, I don't know if you suffer, like if you, this is a big challenge for you, but making my bed is like, it's the most impossible task in the world. Like
I don't even bother with
you
that.
know,
I don't even bother. It's a good
I
day
mean,
if
I don't really either, but like
it's a good day if I've made myself breakfast and I haven't crashed. That's a good day for me.
yeah, I mean, you have to, small wins, right?
Yeah, small wins. I mean, I could make my bed, but then that would be the one activity I do that day. So I choose to prioritize other things.
And that's, so post exertional malaise, I'm sure, as everyone with this condition suffers with, is, when basically like just basically be bed bound, or on the couch, or just out of commission for sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 5 days, sometimes weeks, or sometimes months for people. And all of this stuff is, it actually makes my condition worse. That's my day-to-day life.
We'll be back to our interview after a short brain break. This podcast is dedicated to all the long COVID sufferers out there. I see you. Your voice matters. Thank you to Craig Rogers for creating and recording our theme music. I also want to give a thank you to the online MECFS and POTS communities for welcoming me with open arms and sharing your valuable advice. Is there anything that you have tried that has helped you with your symptoms?
I've kind of been a bit rogue in terms of my own treatment, and branching off and trying to figure out what will work for me in terms of managing this terrible illness. So when I was in Atlanta, I had read a news article about two patients who were suffering with long COVID, who had a second acute COVID infection. They had taken Paxlovid, and they noticed like an improvement in their long COVID symptoms. So I was just like, okay, I am finding myself some Paxlovid and I am going to treat this myself.
Desperate
so
times.
At the time, yeah, exactly. And I didn't have health insurance at the time, so I had lost my health insurance in the US. So I mean, I was just, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to see if this helps make things better. I mean, I know people have tried all sorts of different things,
Yes, they have.
and spent thousands and thousands of dollars on.
Yes, they have.
Found after my second dose, I immediately felt better. I was able to walk further without, feeling fatigued or shortness of breath. I just felt like a lot more just myself again. Like, it was just like I felt peace inside, and I just felt just overall like better in terms of just my total health. I mean, I just felt the symptoms kind of, they were still there, but they were lessened. I mean, when I'm on Paxlovid, I notice that improvement considerably, and it continues to get better over time as I continue to take it.
So it's cumulative for you. Yeah, it kind of feels like, same with my situation, that it's long COVID is the new HIV. It's the days of HIV where there was the Dallas Buyers Club, and people had to do what they could to get a hold of medications and make themselves feel better, right? We're just living that over again. And same with the gaslighting and the public denial that there is a problem.
Yeah.
This next question is a bit of a tough one. What are some of the biggest losses that you have suffered as a result of getting long COVID?
That's something that's like I still am wrestling with. Like it's been 4 years. I was so excited about transitioning in my career. Like I had just I just like quit my job in Singapore and did 2 years full-time study in my graduate degree in public policy. I was really excited about embarking on my new career and my next adventure and living in Atlanta in the United States. I really take pride in my career, and I like to help people. And I was a school teacher for 14 years. Like I miss having that connection with the outside world and doing things that are productive and meaningful, and that you know make the world a better place. I miss that interaction with the world. I miss being able to do the things that I love, like just being active, hiking and traveling, and just just experiencing life. Like not being housebound and trapped at home and things like that. I mean, also just my whole life is kind of has fallen apart. I mean, there's been like just the financial loss is substantial. I mean, I don't know how I'll ever be able to crawl out of this. Um, but it's just something that I've had to kind of accept over time. And, you know, this is my kind of, embraced radical acceptance and say, this is, my current situation. It might not be forever, but I have to just kind of deal with it as it happens. I mean, I see people in the community on the online groups, like really kind of, I see them suffering, like, like the people, especially who are, just kind of coming into long COVID and just watching them kind of like the losses that they're experiencing.
Yeah, the losses are huge. We're completely different people now than what we were before this.
Yeah, I'm a shadow of myself. I mean, that's how I refer to this whole kind of experience. I'm still myself underneath, but it just feels like I'm a fraction of who I used to be. And that's a really big challenge, and it's a really big thing to to deal with. I mean, it's still a challenge for me to. I mean, I spend a lot of time alone, and I have a lot of time just thinking, and it's like I also feel like a lot of guilt in terms of just the stress and the strain that I've had to put my family through, and 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 having this condition. I had to move back to Canada from the US because I had no more resources, and I was evicted. Like that was so traumatic in itself. But I've had to move back into my parents' like home, and they're on fixed income. They're retired. My mother has like a slew of health conditions. I mean, it's really put a strain on them. And I you know I know the stress of like me being sick and me having to move back home and like try and get some help from them, like has definitely put a lot of stress on them, and I feel a lot of guilt about it.
Well, yeah, we're at the stage in our lives where we should be looking after our parents, not the reverse. And I look at people in their 70s and their 80s, and they're out playing pickleball and they're, enjoying retirement. And I'm mainly housebound. So
Yeah.
I get it. What do you wish that people knew about your whole experience with getting COVID and being a long COVID sufferer?
I I just think that the severity of the like disabling nature of it, I feel like is really underplayed. I just wish people would listen and not question or put their own judgment on us. I feel like a lot of times people have like they feel like they have the answer. Oh, if only if you eat healthy or try this or or do this or I mean, I just feel like people just need to be more. informed and to try and understand the experience that we're sharing, and not to question us, and not to kind of downplay our experiences.
Hmm.
I've lost some friends along the way that it's been really hard. At first they were really supportive, but over time they're like, come on now, like you can't milk this forever. Like, like what are you doing? Like, and I'm just like, if I was making, I'm not making this up like in any regard. And a lot of people's understanding of illness is that, time heals everything, time heals wounds. But that's not necessarily the case with illnesses that come out of, viral infections and things like that. HIV doesn't cure itself, viral, conditions. It's a common thing, and it's not, it happens, with SARS and Ebola and things like that. I mean, I want time to, make me feel better, but it's just not the case. And I know that people oftentimes have the best intentions in mind, but being sensitive to the fact that, yeah, I'm not necessarily better, now that I'm four years in. I feel like people often forget that I even have long COVID. Like, until I post something on Facebook, or something happens where I pass out somewhere, or I've been in two car accidents that I would say probably are the results of my long COVID. Until like something that comes up to remind them, I feel like people kind of forget that I'm struggling with this, and they, not necessarily check in or see if they can help me in any way, or see how I'm doing. Um, I feel like it's, yeah, if like you said, like if it's not visible, people often forget, or they just assume that you're okay. And sometimes I wish I just had two broken legs. I feel like I would get a lot more sympathy and a lot more
That
help.
would be a lot easier for
Yeah,
sure. I feel like there's a lack of understanding for chronic illness because recovery is usually linear, and
yeah,
you get sick and then you get better and then it's over. But with this, it's a daily thing that we're living with and will
right.
continue to live with.
Things like fibromyalgia and, like, chronic fatigue. A lot of people think they're psychosomatic illnesses, and they're made up and things like that. But no, it's real, and it's incredibly debilitating. Yeah, we just need to be we people just need to have a lot more empathy, and that's one thing that I've learned in this whole experience, is that just validating someone's experience, just listening, just taking a person's story at value, and acknowledging and validating is just so powerful.
Yes.
And that's something, like, it's so easy to do. And I just want people to keep that in mind, that it's important to validate people's experiences.
I agree.
Yeah.
This kind of ties in with what we were just talking about, but what do you need from friends and family and the general public and the medical community? What do you need?
I can't do this on my own. I do need help. It's hard for me to kind of wrestle with that, but I it's a reality that I can't do this on my own. I do need help, and I do need support, and I think that all of us really do need sort of help from the government, from our healthcare system, that we're all missing. I know that I'm not the only one who's faced homelessness, and facing financial challenges because of this. So there needs to be something. We need more resources. We need more support. I don't feel like our government is listening to us in comparison to, between the U.S. and Canada, in terms of medical care, and the pace of, like, research and things like that. It's sad. I mean, I feel like in the U.S., things are really kind of picking up in terms of support for further research. The whole Senate hearing recently took place. I mean, that's quite considerable in terms of acknowledgement of this being a public health crisis, but also that has widespread economic implications and long-term implications about the economy and a large population that is out of the workforce and that is needing support.
Yeah, that was a really powerful session in Senate last week. And I think they said that it had already cost $1 billion in terms of the American economy. And I think about in Canada, where do they think this is going? Where do they think, having this many people on disability is not going to end well? How, the system's going to collapse at some point. And they need to invest some money in long COVID and COVID itself to prevent that.
Exactly. And a lot of us aren't getting better. So it's just an accumulation of more and more people, right? Our numbers are not going down, right? So
no.
So, at least I feel like in the US, there's been a greater acknowledgement. Maybe it's because there's a greater number of people who have long COVID. Maybe that has to do with, measures, some states and things like that were less stringent in terms of, physical distancing and all the policies and things like that. But as we see, even just a mild infection with COVID-19 can lead to long COVID. It's really, we're not sure of why, but long COVID is not going anywhere. It's only going to get worse. And I just feel like there is really a lack of options here in terms of care. And there does not seem to be a lot of progress. I've looked at clinical trials and I've looked at studies in Canada, and there's really nothing.
There's not much,
no.
And they're closing the long COVID clinics.
Exactly.
So
it's
and what they did have was not effective to begin with.
No, I do see that in Quebec. There's some research happening, but yeah, it just doesn't seem to be, on people's radars. I would like to. I feel like my best option for treatment is returning to the U.S. It's just being able to financially do that. Am I going to live in my car? I would, at this point, I would, if I could get some, treatment that is actually dealing with the actual root cause of this condition. So for me, I don't see Canada really making any progress with dealing with this problem that we know is growing day by day.
No, they haven't even acknowledged that long COVID is a thing. So how do you make progress from that?
Exactly. It's so disheartening, right? It's just like things are moving at a snail's pace, if they are even moving. As you said, clinics are closing and things like that. It's a regression like that.
Yeah.
I've just read about that one guy who, he was referred to the clinic and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we're closed. So here's some links to the CDC website, WHO. Yeah. Really? Come on. It's just, it's really showing some of the challenges that we have coming up, within 5 or 10 years, especially with, growing elderly population and potentially more and more people with long COVID. It's not, it's kind of scary to think about, down the line.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal story with me, and you're helping to spread the word about long COVID. You're continuing to do that, and to let other sufferers know that there's people out there just like them. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this work. I think it's incredibly important. Thank you.
Make sure to check back with Voices of Long COVID on our Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube accounts for that new episode dropping next week. Until then, stay safe and stay informed.